I'm Dr. Petra Weldis, and we are here at CSLDallas with our Science of Mind class, as we are, as Ryan reminded me this morning, still in Chapter 8, The Power of Thought. It's long, but juicy, juicy. And a huge thank you to Tracy, Dr. Tracy Brown, for being with you guys last week. And we are continuing on. So, I feel like every time we read a section, it's like, this is a really important section. Underline this section. And part of the reason for that is because it feels to me like Ernest Holmes becomes more clear when he's not just talking about the philosophy, but he's talking about the application of the philosophy. Because in the science of mind, while we understand that understanding the nature of reality and the philosophy or the idea that we have about how things work is important, what's more important is the practical application. It should actually make our lives different, better, more aligned, we should feel more belonging in the universe, and also more trust and a greater ability to create lives. Right? And our theme for this year is right here, right now, create. Not in some distant future, not when we're more enlightened, not when the world is in alignment, but right here, right now. And that our purpose and birthright is to co-create lives. And know that as we co-create our lives, that is impactful on consciousness itself and on the lives of those around us. And so while we're co-creating lives, we want to make sure that we're co-creating a world that works for all beings, all people, to the best of our ability, that the lives that we're creating are contributions to this larger good. And so the engagement with it is to co-create, to express and to experience, and not just wait somehow for life to do it for us or for some magic formula, some magic to happen. And to a certain extent, it is the opportunity to take radical responsibility for the fact that we are creative and to participate in that as consciously as we can. Because the other side of that coin is we're creating all the time. We just are on autopilot. And so what we're co-creating doesn't come out of consciousness, but comes out of, or our consciousness, but it comes out of our subconscious. Old patterns, all the way back to the fundamental patterns of the human experience and the biological imperatives we have for safety and security and things like that. And our most fundamental human physical experience of that sense of separation. And so the philosophy gives us a framework, but now we actually have to apply it. So we've been talking in this chapter on the power of thought. We've been in this chapter for a really long time because it actually starts there. It starts not only with our understanding and our experience of connection and of the divine presence and of these universal laws, but then the way in which we consciously engage with it. And to consciously engage with it actually means we're awake and aware, which means that we can think about it, we can set intentions, and remember that we understand thought to be movement in consciousness. So it's not just, I'm going to think about it, and I'm going to think about it, and, maybe do some wishing and hoping. No. It's a movement in consciousness. So conscious thought is actually deliberate and intentional. And the more engagement we have with our whole self, that means the more conviction we have in understanding what's going on, and the more trust we have in the outcome, right? That becomes the whole embodied experience of it. But it does actually start with, what do I want? What's not right? How am I feeling about this? Is it in alignment, right? All of those things actually are us being consciously aware. And so that's why we start with that process, even if it's a what we might call a download or an intuition. Once it comes into our consciousness, right, it is something that we can sense and see and hear as a thought. Even the feeling that comes up is something we then have a thought about to try to understand what that feeling is. So over and over and over again, I want to remind us that this is not heady and it's not cerebral. It is a recognition about how consciousness and subconscious consciousness actually work together. And it is that movement in consciousness that is the power of our thought. So we begin here with this section, the power within, reminding us that there is this power within, right? It's greater than we are and we can use it. So it's right here. Now, if we're starting in this second full paragraph, we have as much of this power to use as we believe in and embody, right? And so part of our task of learning about the nature of reality is to examine the philosophy, see if it resonates, see if it makes sense to us, which is sort of that believing in part, right? And then the embodiment comes because we've tested it. That's the science of mind. We've tested it out. We've started with a few things that maybe seem effortless to us or seem like they're not the big, they're not big, huge, I'm going to save the world or I'm going to save my life, but things that we begin to test that there is this power that we co-create with, right? And so the believing in and the embodying is that growing awareness that there is this power and it is present right here, right now, and we not only are using it, but we can use it deliberately. So as much power as we can use as we believe and embody. This storehouse of nature is filled with good, right? It's always available and it is ours to access, but the awakening must be within our own thought. Ooh, man. Right? How many times have we said, I'd love my life to be better, I'm going to get a better job, and then within our own thought, within our own consciousness, we are diminishing ourselves, we're afraid, we think it's never going to happen, why would anybody hire us because we don't have the skills, yada, 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 yada. Whatever it is, relationships, I used to believe that all my relationships failed because I was poison. It's true. I believed that all the way through into my 20s. And of course, that's exactly how my relationships played out. So it reinforced my own belief in how I thought about myself, right? So the awakening has to become within, the awakening of what's really going on and who we really are. And the fact that I was co-creating one relationship after another that played out exactly in accordance to what I had in my consciousness. And so this awakening must be within our thought. The word we speak is the law of our lives, and nothing hinders its operation but ourselves. All the ways we talk about it, right? We sit we go in the morning, we do our affirmations, we do some spiritual reading, we have great meditation, and then we go out into our lives, and what we say to our friends is, oh, this is hard. My life is hard. This thing I'm working on is hard. Oh my God, it's hard. And it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard. And I hear a lot of us say that. I can fall into that trap myself, right? And so the words that we are using and the way in which we are speaking about it is the law in our lives. And nothing stands in the way of the outpicturing but ourselves, right? I'm standing in my own way of the spiritual work I've done that morning, or the work I've done over a period of time about something, and now here we are, I'm affirming it's hard, it's hard, it's hard, and I'm standing in the way of the very power. Let me say, I guess another way I think of it is I'm literally giving that power two different directions, right? A direction that says A and another direction that says B, and that's the outcome I'm going to get. Whichever one has more conviction, more repetition, more belief, more power, right, is the one that's going to have a power. And so somewhere, I don't know where it is, I really should find it, but I do remember somewhere reading Ernest Holmes saying, fuzzy thinking, fuzzy demonstration. And fuzzy thinking is this sort of conflicting information that we're giving the law, this conflicting set of words and thoughts that we're using to co-create. And so we get a fuzzy demonstration. We sort of get it, but we don't. Or we get it, but then it turns out to be what we actually were afraid of, because that's what we were affirming while we were affirming our good. Do you see what I'm saying? And so then we get this mish. So now we talked about this before, and it's hugely important. Underscore, underline, especially for those of us with a Catholic background, maybe others of you with other kinds of backgrounds. We may use this creative word for whatever purpose we desire. And this word becomes the law unto the thing for which it was spoken. We can use this creative word for whatever we desire. And there's nothing right or wrong or good or bad about what we desire, except for the one ethical prescription we have, that it harms no one, right? But we often think, wait, I should do my spiritual work only when it's really important. Or like as if we have a certain number of prayers we can use, a certain number of spiritual mind treatments we can use, or that somehow it's not spiritual to do our work around having our presentation at work go really well, in which we should only do our spiritual work around becoming more spiritual, becoming closer to the divine. Well, we can do our spiritual work and use our words and our thought and our spiritual practice to become more in alignment, but we can just as much use it for the creation of our lives. Anything from something specific to an overarching idea of the kind of life we want to create for ourselves, or the kind of life we want to create for our families, or the workplace that we are in, or all of those things. The universal law has no opinion. It doesn't say, oh wait, why are you planting tomatoes? You should be planting corn. The soil accepts the seed, right? And this is really important. I was raised, you're spiritual. I was raised Catholic. So there was that subtle intimation. It is more spiritual to be poor. It's more spiritual to only think about the divine. You never really think about what you're doing or whether you're successful or not, because that's a result of God's favor, that you would be successful or not, right? Somehow you're picked because you're pious and holy. I was clear that I was never going to be picked. So that was just never going to happen. And that made me sad, because I didn't think I was a bad human being, right? But I didn't quite measure up, and I certainly didn't align with all the rules and regulations. And so it's so freeing and empowering to recognize these things. We have the right and the necessity to pay attention to what we're desiring and choosing, because that is, in fact, what we're creating. We are given the power to sit in the midst of our lives and direct their activities. Strife and struggle are unnecessary. We only need to know, right? Know the truth, know how it works, know what we want, know how to speak our word, but we must know constructively. We must know constructively so that we can use this co-creative power to create lives that work for us and to participate in lives that work all together, right? And that add to the overarching life that we're creating together. So this power within, right? This is so fundamental to the practice of new thought and the science of mind. And this constructive use of the power and recognizing the power within partly starts with self-awareness. The self-awareness, how are we in fact using it? Because we are using it. How are we using it is so fundamental to this process, to examine, am I using it out of fear? Am I using it out of lack? Am I using it out of good? Am I using it out of joy or an expectation that I will actually make a contribution, that I am actually okay, that I am actually in alignment with spiritual truth, right? This is why self-awareness and paying attention to how we are using our thoughts is so important. So we're going to stop and talk about this for a little bit. When and how do you recognize that there is a power that you're using? And when and how do you stand in your own way? These are worthwhile questions to explore. Let's share our thoughts about it and see if we can't support each other. So we're going to say good morning to Ryan and Richard and see what's going on out there. Good morning to everybody who's with us online.
Well, good morning to you too, Dr. Petra, and hello to everybody in the room. Thank you, Ross. You see me, I see you. I see all of you. And I see all of you online too, and we love that you are in community with us today all around the globe, worldwide. I don't know. I had to echo that. Anyway, so we do want you to engage with us today. And for the folks here in the room, just please raise your hand and we'll pass a microphone to you. And then also for the folks that are joining us online via Zoom, you can hit the raise your hand icon located down below underneath the reactions or the more tab. And or you can put your questions and comments inside of the chat. And the same goes true for all of our lovely folks online via Facebook Live. Put your questions and comments inside of the chat and we'll bring that into the room. And I always like to mention we keep those anonymous so that way we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. So going here into the audience first.
1, 2, 3 right here.
I see 3 hands, so online people, you're going to have to get faster. Just saying. This is a contest. Anyways, we'll start off here with Armando. Armando, go ahead and kick us off.
Good morning, Dr. Petra.
Good morning, Armando.
I think the power within, I'm really in my zone, or at least I feel like I'm in that elevated space. And one of the things that I ask myself for about a month now is what must I embody and what must I release to remain above the law of average. And when I'm discovering every day that I ask myself that, and I check in 2-3 times a day, and things just happen so easily, and I co-create. And give you a couple of examples. One is I'm in the process of creating an academy, an online academy. And I met with my consultant, and I said, when I was in Austin, the governor has the water industry as one of the priorities. So I had my team search for certification programs that are available. Got a list. But we don't have nobody that knows how to facilitate these things, and I've never worked in the water industry. I don't know anything about water industry. So a week later, consultant comes back, and I meet. She says, Armando, you're not going to believe this. I said, what's that? Because I moved on and went on to the next project. And she says, I just got back from D.C., and I met this lady who's in the water industry, and she has an agency, and she's looking for partners in Dallas, and she wants to meet with you.
Okay.
Like,
I love that.
Make this up. It's just like,
right.
It's just coming so easily. And then it was like, okay, we're expanding to Collin County. We may need some office space. I have a meeting with a potential partner. By the way, we have a beautiful space here. We'd love to offer you free office space, access to all amenities, everything. Okay. And the last one is a year and a half ago, I met the matriarch of a foundation, and I went and I introduced myself at this event. And then I went and talked to someone and said, oh, that's very bold of you. You probably shouldn't have done that. They don't really talk to you. I'm like, well, I did. And she said, well, I want to know more about cardboard projects sometime. I said, okay, well, let me see what I can do to get connected. Didn't go anywhere. A year and a half later, I received a check for $25,000.
I love that.
But there was no limitation. They're like limiting
Right.
me. Oh, you can't speak to me. You can't do this. I'm like, no,
Right.
no.
Right. It's fabulous, Armando. So before you take the microphone away, so what did you start with? I do my spiritual practice. I'm focusing on what do I need to embody? What do I need to release, right? Exactly what we were reading about. What do I have to awaken to and how do I not stand in my own way? So the thing I want to keep hammering home about these amazing stories that Armando is telling us is that he works it. You work it every day. And I know this about you and you share it, but sometimes it can become easy to say, oh, well, that's Armando. Oh, well, that is Armando because he's got this amazing program. No, Armando is just like the rest of us. The difference is Armando works it every day. And he has patiently worked it every day. And for years, it was slow and small and slow and small, and then it began to blossom, and now it's exploding, right? And I so honor and respect you for the way in which you share with us your continued dedication to your practice. And notice it's not, oh, I'm going to meditate every morning, right? That is a practice. We call that a formal practice, but it's the in the middle of the day practice. It's the what's going on, what do I need to become aware of right now practice, what's maybe standing in my way practice, right? It's this ongoing process, and it's really inspiring to listen to how these things unfold. And they look like miracles, but they're not. They're not, right? It's actually how we raise ourselves above the law of averages, which at the moment is very critical with the potential economic issues and the loss of grants and money and who knows what all, none of which need to actually affect Cardboard Project, because you're raising yourself above the law of averages using your spiritual work.
Yes, and one last thing is that right now I have $1.4 million that's frozen. The federal froze it, and we don't have access.
Right.
But I'm not allowing that to keep me from saying, oh my God, what's going to happen? What am I going to do? No, I just, okay, well, whatever's happening there, I got to go and work on I got to go water the other flowers,
Yes.
the other plants. And then whenever that gets resolved, it gets resolved.
Yes.
Or whatever it's going to come out, I don't know.
Yes.
But I got to keep going. I can't just sit here and
Can't just fixate on what's not working or fixate on the condition, right? We keep fixating over and over and over again on there is a power that we are using. How are we using it, right? It's brilliant. So thank you. I assumed that was part of what was going on, right? And good for you. We're always a choice, and this is our birthright to choose what we're going to focus on. Thank you. All right, I saw Ross's hand and then Willie's, so we'll go back there.
It's accusation time.
Uh-oh. Who are you accusing of what?
Well, I'm actually accusing Ernest Holmes,
Aha.
not you personally.
Okay.
I've become sensitive to a number of words that any time I use them, I feel offended that I use them.
Uh-huh.
Like, I hope this works. Mm-hmm. I've caught myself saying that and going, what utter crap. How could I say such a thing? Mm-hmm. And so I wish this would, and going, that is ridiculous.
Right.
I've come to the place of, just tell me what's so. Mm-hmm. And going, okay, now I've got information to work with. Now what do we really want to happen?
Yes.
Also, give it to the Lord. And go, oh, yeah, me too. Because you see these signs everywhere, and I say, how long are people going to give up the responsibility for their own lives?
Right.
And I know where I got that. Mm-hmm. Radical responsibility.
Radical responsibility. Mm-hmm.
Which is the only powerful place to stand.
Right.
I get all the consequences of all my behavior. I might as well claim it powerfully
Right.
and say, I get to do something about this.
Yes. Beautiful.
So I'm not blaming you.
I know, but it is annoying. It's very annoying when you realize, wait, I can't do that anymore.
I keep trying
Yes.
to do it.
Yes.
This doesn't work.
Right. And so, and I do want to say it's really important. You know, Ernest Holmes says hope is good, but it's a subtle hope is good. It's better than despair, but it's a subtle illusion because it's not the co-creative declaration. Now, the other side of that coin is as we use the power for good, our lives should in general have a more hopeful outlook. Thomas Troward calls that hopeful outlook cheerful expectancy.
That's a better description of it.
Right? And so we are cheerfully expecting to see the movement in some directions along the lines that we are moving toward. And so we might call that a more hopeful attitude, right? But it's not in the midst of our spiritual work. No, we do not hope. Because then we are waiting or hoping that the law will give us what we've said, as opposed to knowing that that's how it works. Beautiful.
Right.
Thank you. All right, we've got a comment online, and then we'll come over here to Willie.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this. It came in through the chat, and oddly, it sounds like lyrics of an 80s song. It says, "Hope is the crossroad between doubt and desire." I thought that was a good.
It is. I love that.
All right.
I love that. Thank you for
Go
sharing.
ahead.
I'm Willie. I went to my first therapist when I was 27. And the first thing I told her was, I keep getting in these bad relationships. Every time I turn around, every time I get rid of one, I'm in another one. And
We won't ask people to raise their hand.
Yeah, really.
How many of us have had that? You don't have to raise your hand online either.
and I said, what is wrong with me? And she said, what makes you think it's you? Mm-hmm. And boy, that was permission. That was permission for me to get out of my own way.
Yes.
And see myself differently.
Yes.
And not listen to all that crap I've heard all my life, and just turn it around.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Beautiful.
I'll never forget that.
Right. Right, because we're attracting out of the BS that we've
Exactly.
learned to think about ourselves. I actually remember, you probably were in the room over in Pankey Hall years ago. We were having Sunday morning class, which we've been doing forever, right? God knows which version of the book which time we were through the book. And I remember the Sunday I sat on the stool in Pankey Hall and I said, "Oh my God, I'm a great catch."
Yes, you did.
Don't you remember
Yes,
that? Right?
yes, you did.
That was that same moment. Like, why am I attracting out of all this? And that's the thing. I think I said it earlier, right? That all my relationships were failing because I believed I was poisoned.
Exactly.
And somehow that is how I had interpreted in my child mind or in my teenage mind, whatever messages I was receiving or however I was being treated or whatever it was, that was how it had come to be understood, right, in my own mind. And so I was clear that every relationship was failing because I was poison. And no, it was just that I was picking out of a really wrong set of thoughts about myself, right? Picking and attracting. And so I'm glad you remember that. That's like that moment was one of those light bulb moments. And so you had that with your therapist, and it changes everything, right? And it is that acceptance. In reality, there is a power for good within us. We can actually use it. That is our birthright. That is who we are. That's what we're doing. And so let's get with the program, and then we stop being in our own way. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it is like, wait, why do I think all these things about myself? This does not mean that we aren't obviously wanting to grow. We need skill sets in communication. We need to learn how to express love and anger appropriately, all of those things. Of course, we're growing as human beings and we're growing with our skills. But to recognize the beauty of our own selves and the joy that it is when we feel that, and then we attract out of that. It's an entirely different set of circumstances. Yes, beautiful. Okay, Ryan, checking in with you.
Yeah, just looking here. I haven't seen anybody online yet. So is there anybody here in the room?
Right here, back here.
Looks like we've got somebody here in the
So
back.
let's get the microphone. Thanks, Armando.
Actually, I see a hand now. Let's go online first, and then we'll come back to you. Okay. So Anita, I need you to unmute yourself.
Good morning, Anita.
Good morning. Things seem to be breaking in and out, so hopefully my internet is clear enough for you today.
Okay.
Thinking about, ways that we can hold ourselves back, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at the stock markets and what they've been doing, the last week or so. Mm-hmm. And with me having retired last year, I made the choice not to take Social Security yet. And so I'm only depending on my investment accounts to pay my bills, et cetera, et cetera. And when I look at the fact that my accounts have lost essentially a year's worth of income mm-hmm. in the last couple of weeks, I could go, holy crap, but yet what I'm finding is it's become opportunity for me to continue in my spiritual practice. Yes. That my investment accounts are not my source and supply. And to hold to what y'all have heard me say time and time again, that all of my needs are met before the need arises. Pressed down, good measure, and overflowing. And so, I could very easily get into that whole panic thing, because of my humanness, but instead, I'm being grateful that I am going back to my spiritual practice to know where my source and supply is.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, Anita, so grateful for you to share that. Good for you. I know that it absolutely outpictures as that abundance and every one of your needs being met. And it is a beautiful example, right? One of the things that I hear people say is, well, these things are happening to me, therefore the universe is teaching me a lesson. This is a lesson I have to learn. No. This is an opportunity for practice. That's what it is. And it is an opportunity to dig deeper. I mean, it's easy to believe that the universe is for us when everything is going beautifully. It's easy to believe that all of our needs are met and everything is fine when everything is fine. It's when there's the moment of discord or the moment of the, funds being frozen or dropping, that this is what Armando was talking about and what Anita so beautifully expressed. This is what it means. Our spiritual work raises us out of the law of averages. We're no longer operating on the sort of statistical, generic, normal human understanding of how life works. We recognize that we have moved ourselves into, truthfully, a higher law, the law that understands that we are co-creating. And so these are the times when we have to just dig deeper. We have to stand more firmly and not allow ourselves to be pulled back and forth, or when we do find ourselves, right, immediately to become aware we're standing in our own way and to go back to what we know over and over and over again. And by doing that, we actually raise ourselves out of what Thomas Troward called the law of averages, which just means the sort of generic way that life is unfolding. Because we are consciously co-creating, and we can co-create something else. So that was a great example of that, Anita. Thank you so much for sharing that, and I hope that you are inspired by it. I hope everybody is inspired by that. That's what we're called to do. All right.
Hi.
Say your name.
Oh, Catherine's my name. Hi. So last night I needed a little help here. So last night I go to this hockey game, and the teams are a really good match, and they're tied. Then one's up, one's down, a little point here and there, whatever. So I thought, well, and I know I could pick more important things, but I just thought, wouldn't it be fun if I just know that they're going to win this game? And so I just get myself into this, and everybody around me is saying, it's over. Some people were already leaving. And I said, we're going to win this game in the last minute. I know it. And they do. So I jump up and down. The whole entire stadium jumps up and down, and we're all ecstatic, and it's great. And we. And then the referees all of a sudden are all talking, and the bottom line is we don't win. It didn't go through. So in that instance, my immediate thing was I mean, I could definitely pick other things to try to work with, but it deflated me for a minute. It made me feel like, oh gosh, all my old like, what am I doing wrong? I must not be doing it right. I never do. And the only thing that satisfied me at all was to tell myself, well, whatever, I'll just go co-create something else. I'll just, but I wanted to bring this up because it seems like a small, tiny little thing, but it is a perfect example of what happens in my brain, and I'm just wondering what the thinking is, or what.
Well, so you probably started with an incredibly hard or an incredibly challenging place to start doing that work, because lots of other people were also having thoughts around that game. Right? And if, in fact, people were leaving, and a lot of people were thinking we're losing, right? So it doesn't mean that you as a single human being can't change collective consciousness in the moment. But I would suggest that you start with individual things that are exclusively yours. So this is why when I first got into it, literally we were told, start creating parking places. When you're in an area where parking is tough, do absolutely affirm that you get a good parking spot, right? Actually, I did that so diligently because I was like, okay, really? Because I was like, I don't know how this stuff works. So I got so good at making parking places that now, my wife, she's like constantly like, well, I don't have to worry about it. We always get rock star parking because of you. Because that is simply, that got laid down as an expectation, right? And there's nothing magic about parking places, and they really don't matter. It's just, you can see it, right? And so it's also why often when we're first starting to learn to use these laws and to discover our co-creativeness, we start with something small and we start with something tangible so that we can see that it's been created. And we start with something that is not engaged with anyone else, right? Because that can start muddying the waters, and it will potentially create doubt until you really are so grounded in it that what other people are thinking doesn't actually engage. But it's important to do baby steps. Otherwise, you become deflated. It's challenging, right? So in Richard Bach's book, Illusions, the Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah, right? There in that story, he tells Donald Shimoda tells his protege there, just imagine that you're going to attract a white feather. Just something simple. Right? I know people that have started their work on abundance by knowing that they would find dimes on the floor, dimes on the road, and all of a sudden, dimes start showing up, and then they're like, okay, well, what if it's a quarter? And then you know what I mean? And so this is the science part. You have to actually show yourself that co-creation works. So you took on a really interesting thing, and you did actually have an impact, right? But potentially the larger impact was the consciousness that was in the room in general. I don't know. So that's why we start with small, specific, tangible, concrete things so that we can show ourselves it works. And we begin to build from there. So that's what I would do. I would start with that.
So helpful. I'm excited.
Yes, and have fun with it, right? Have fun with it. You know, you need the perfect pair of shoes for a dress. You know, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And it's not because material things are going to make us happy and we're not, you know, being spiritual, blah, blah, blah. No, all we're doing is we're going into the laboratory, right? The laboratory of our lives, and we're now going to experiment with this idea that we co-create. So we start with small, tangible, concrete experiments that help us get our hands around it. And then we begin to see it. So we get our heart around it. Then we begin to have cheerful expectation. And now we can start doing it on more complicated things, things that to us maybe feel larger, even though to the universe there's no big or small. And then slowly over time, right, we move to, we're just co-creating lives. But that's where we start. It's a great question. Fabulous.
Yes, so I have a question here in the chat, paraphrasing here a little bit. So what we have been talking about here in the class and what most people have been sharing is this ideal of how it can work positively, but can the same be true for it working negatively, i.e. health or lack of prosperity or abundance in our lives?
Well, yeah, that's what we're doing all the time until we're conscious, right? Of course. That's why we have to become conscious about what we're saying and what we're thinking and what we're doing, right? And so, you know, the examples are, I mean, I don't want to plant examples in your mind. It's hard to, like, you know, go to negative examples, but there are unfortunately many of them. Years and years ago, I worked with a person who had a form of cancer, and she went into complete remission, was completely healed by it, and then came back. Yeah.
Oh, nothing. Go ahead. Please finish. I was just noting that somebody was online.
Oh, okay. And so we did some amazing work, and went into complete remission, and I remember then a few months later, we had the conversation. I'm afraid it's coming back. I'm afraid it's coming back. I'm afraid it's coming back. And I was like, why? Do you have any symptoms? No. Is there anything going on? No. Does the doctor say anything? No. I'm afraid it's coming back though. She was dead 3 months later.
Oh, wow.
Same thing happened to my dad. Exactly the same thing happened to my dad. It's heartbreaking to see, right? And it's just years and years and years ago, there was a woman in our community, and she was like, okay, you want to know how this works? She said, it's in my family, this disease, and in my family, and my husband spent years saying, I'm going to die of this certain disease. He had no symptoms. He did none of the things that caused that disease. And 10 years of saying it, sure enough, he died of that disease. We don't normally worry about a particular disease, right? But we may worry about various other things that can show up that way, because our bodies do represent our negative thinking. And so, yes, over and over, and I mean, this is what's happening when we're on autopilot. So, like, I don't want to give any more examples. Unfortunately, I have a host of them. And I have the host of them from my own life until I woke up. And I started taking responsibility for constructively, right? That was the very last sentence. We only need to know, but we must know constructively. Why? Because when we know destructively, that happens. And that's just us on autopilot. So we want to shift our expectations and what we're working on. All right, go ahead, Ryan.
We only have a couple of minutes left, so Brenda, I'm going to ask, just please, if you could laser focus your question or comment. Go ahead and unmute yourself and join us, Brenda. Hello.
Good morning, Brenda.
The perfect example of how we get in our way. For those who remembered my first coming into CSL, I've done incredible work in my mental, emotional, and spiritual healing, and had maintained, unbeknownst to me, my old mind script of disease and debility, up until after I became bedbound in February and before my neurosurgery a week ago. And Spirit shook me by the back of the neck and said, you see, you're still doing it, and you better change or it's going to keep happening. I am now at a third of the pain medicines prescribed a week ago. I just finished an 8-minute walk while you were talking. Slow.
Oh.
And the realization that we can do I can do my spiritual work in my head and have forgotten to include the body that's carried all the negative programs.
Yeah.
So now I'm on a new trajectory. I will be back dancing very soon. PT says I've met the outpatient goals for home PT, and after next week, when they try to take me outside to walk for the first time in I don't know how long, they're going to have to dismiss me until the doctor sends me to outpatient PT. Wow.
Wow.
Thank you for the growth and change.
Yes, it's beautiful. And thank you for sharing, Brenda. Thank you so much, right? And we keep healing at deeper and deeper levels. We keep becoming aware at deeper and deeper levels, and so we can co-create something differently. It's really beautiful. So don't be afraid, right? I love what Ernest Holmes says. We can demonstrate in spite of our doubts and fears. So we only need to be at 51%, and we already start tipping the scales. So don't be afraid. Don't become superstitious of your negative thinking. Just stop, turn it around, and do the diligent work of staying as engaged or as committed to the thought that you have decided to think. It's great. All right, so we're going to stop here. We've got some wonderful things to invite you to.
And as a reminder, just stop it, right? It's just easy. Just stop.
That's right.
No, talking about co-creations, we've been listening to the online community, and as you can see, we get right to the very end, and you guys all just want to talk about the same topic, right?
Right.
Nodding the heads in the audience. And I'm sure those online are thinking the same thing as well. So we are piloting a new program. We are going to have the After Science of Mind after class, which is going to be hosted online via Zoom. I put the link inside of the chat for those people who are online. You can click on that right after this class and engage with one another. So I just wanted to let you guys know we'll be trying that out for a few weeks. And for the folks who are here in the room, we'll be posting some more stuff on our website. So stay tuned. We'll be unraveling that as we go along. But Dr. Petra, coming up this April 15th, we have a really amazing class that you and Carol Merlot were talking about on our live stream the other day. It's called From Whence We Came.
Right, and as weird as the title is, it really is an amazing walk through the history of human spirituality in Western civilization and in the United States, which culminates in New Thought, and the strains that bring all of that together and how that all built. Right, we often think that New Thought is new. It comes, it's not. It's not new at all. It actually has deep roots in our whole Western civilization, in philosophy and religion, and it's a specially American-born tradition. So Carol does an amazing job of showing how these ideas get layered and layered and pulled forward into more and more modern ideas until it turns into New Thought in the Science of Mind. You do not want to miss this class. And if you are interested in going into Inward Journey, anybody who's interested in going into Inward Journey, this is the history class you must have. So if you want to go into Inward Journey this fall, you need this class. So sign up. It starts on Tuesday.
Yeah, and talking about roots, we have a wonderful Easter celebration that's going to be coming up, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Dr. Petra enlightened me that the story behind Easter has a lot of traditions woven into it. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about that, and what else can they expect from Easter?
Well, yeah, so we have a really, really beautiful Easter celebration and ritual prepared. It's we're exploring the symbolism that is in the Easter story, but is in also other death and resurrection stories. And we're going to be participating in our own ritual around all of that. We have incredible music, a beautiful ritual. We have extra musicians, sound bowls and flute, and all kinds of really special and wonderful things. So plan to join us next week. The service will be a little bit longer because it's chock full, so plan to stay. And then we have the Easter Bunny. We have the Easter egg hunt afterwards for the kids and the bunny for pictures for the family. So it's a full day. Please do join us. We will be having class, Sunday morning class. And then we'll go on to this really amazing celebration, the myth or the legend, Jesus the Spirit Human. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, and I just have one more quick thing I wanted to mention because I'm a nerd and I love Star Wars. I don't know if anybody else likes Star Wars out here, but we have a special guest, Dr. Kristen Noble, who will be coming here to awaken the Jedi within. Welcome to the dark side.
Welcome to the light side.
Light side, right. So she'll be here, and she's going to be showing the meaning behind some of those fabulous stories that we've been watching for generations and generations. So I invite you to come be here on May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you. I know, right?
Love it, right?
And it's all about the universal principles that are in those stories, right? It's not just the hero's journey as Joseph Campbell talks about it, but there's lots of universal principles shared in those stories, and it's great. And she does a great job. She'll have a book. She's going to do a book signing. She'll have a book available, so she'll speak and do the workshop. So now's the time to sign up. We'd love to have you there. I think it's going to be really, really, really fun. It's going to be really fun because, like Ryan, I'm a huge Star Wars, Star Trek fan, all that stuff. So I've loved Star Wars forever.
I know. Now we just need to find somebody who's going to cover the Lord of the Ring trilogies, and we'll be.
Oh, come to New Zealand with us. That's the thread for our New Zealand trip.
Ding, ding, ding. Plug for
absolutely.
Spirit Tours. Go check them out. Awesome.
All right. So thanks for joining us today. We'll see you in the celebration, or we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
All right.